Good morning, guys. Thank you so much for joining me. So today's video is going to be a little bit different, I guess. I'm going to be talking about Nigel Farage and the Reform Party. Just before we begin, I want to start this because this video may seem like it's a bash into reform, but it's not. I met with Nigel last year in Doncaster. And what immediately struck me was he's smart, he's motivated, and he's enthusiastic. And he's a really good guy. And guys, and I pride myself on being a good judge of character, as you'll potentially see later. At the event, there was lots of talkers and presenters, and they all went home as soon as they'd done their little presentation or talk. Nigel stayed behind and he spoke to everyone. He was polite, he was courteous. He was just brilliant, and he seemed to be a really genuine guy. I didn't get a picture took with him. I'm not a fanboy. If he asked me for a picture, I'd have said yes. I'd have even let him touch my hair. But so when we're looking moving forward to this election, I will be out with people I know and trust who will be standing for reform, and I'll be helping them whatever way I can. I myself resigned from reform because of the organisation at the lower levels. I'm not going to get into it now, guys, and I don't really want to have a big sermon about it, but I resigned because the way I've been treated, I'm not going to get into it. I've worked all over the world. I've worked for military, I've worked for NGOs, I've worked for governments, I've worked for the British, Australian, Canadian, American embassies, I've worked directly for the government of Ukraine. So I've got a good knowledge of organisations, and I was seeing cracks in the lower levels, and guys, it was just something I didn't want to be involved with because I fear that they're going to have integrity issues as they move forwards and as they grow and as they become bigger, and that's just going to be ammunition for another side to push on them. And what I feel that's going to do is it's going to grow, it's going to give more ammunition to Labour and the Liberals as we move forward. So let me just give you a quick anecdote, guys, all right? I'm from a military background, and something that's really important in the military is integrity. Now, if something happens in the military and there's been a big problem and something's broken, somebody's done something wrong, something's been smashed, the vehicle, something's gone wrong, the sergeant major will come out and he'll say, right, guys, integrity call, who did it? And whoever, I've never seen whoever's done it not go, take a deep breath and say, yeah, so that was me. And then he goes up in the office, he takes his punishment, and that's the end of it, all right? I've never not seen that happen in the military, so that's kind of the integrity I'm used to. In Iraq, when I used to work for the British Embassy, we had an American working for the British Embassy. Now, the project manager, he got a bit, he didn't realise there was an American working for the British Embassy. He said, oh, well, we might have to let him go because, as I understand it, should only be Brits. Well, there was a bit of an argument in the office. The team leader said, nowhere on that contract does it say we only employ Brits. I sent you his passport, his American passport, and it went through. Nobody's hidden this. Nobody's done anything wrong. He's a great guy. I'm not going back and telling him he might be sacked or he might not be sacked. So the team leader stuck his neck out. He went up, he's like, no, I'm not going back. And then they ended up going up to the ambassador and getting a decision right there and then. So then he could come back and either tell one of these blokes he was getting the sack or he wasn't. That's kind of the integrity I'm used to, guys, all right? So if we had half of that in politics today, guys, all right, it would be a lot better place. So what I'm really worried about, all the great work that Nigel's done over his huge career, it could be derailed by things that are happening at the lower levels, these cracks at the seams. But, when an organisation grows as quickly as Reform has, This is inevitable. You're going to get these teething problems. But the other side, Labour, everybody's going to jump on this, guys. They're going to say, look, you've done this, you've got this guy working for you, you've got this guy working for you. He's done this, he's done that. And what I'm really worried about is if Reform do well at this next election, these cracks will appear and there'll be problems. And then that's just going to be infighting in the whole government. Because, guys, be under no illusion. We are on the cusp of a third world war. The likes that we've never witnessed a war that could be honoured by the end of the year. No, it's going to make the Second World War look like a playground fight. And we need a strong government. We are a legitimate target for the Russians. Nobody think otherwise. It doesn't matter what happens in the future. We are a target now for the Russians. There's no going back on that. So the system, the political system in the UK is, I'm not going to say it's broken. I'm going to say it doesn't work anymore. We don't have that situation because we have something called, and again, I don't know if anybody else is using this. We have something called late stage democracy. So we're in late stage capitalism at the moment, by such as you try and start a small business now. You can't, because the bigger business are in control of everything. So yes, of course, some people can be lucky. They may get a lucky break. But most of the big companies control everything. I used to go to some of these fundraising events, and what people used to do is they used to come with these real, innovative ideas, and like a big prime, Boeing, Lockheed or someone, they would sit there and the ideas that they like, they would just buy that company and shelf it and do nothing with it. They've bought that company, they've bought that rights, they've bought that competition. They don't have to do anything with that, and then when a government comes along, they can sell that for times 10 the price. So we're in late stage capitalism at the moment, where all the money and all the resources have gone to a few companies, and it's very difficult for anyone to start. We're also in late stage democracy, when all the politicians at the moment, they're all, well, especially sitting government, I'd say Reform is different. All the sitting governments, they've all got their sponsors, then their donors, we can't call them sponsors. They've got their donors, and then donors will then want something from them, of course, otherwise why would they donate? And each politician's got their own little clique of companies they work with, and that's kind of the system at the moment, guys, all right? And that's just the way we've moved. Capitalisation and democratisation have moved together, and that's where we're at. We can't argue with it. That is where we're at. So that's why the voting system in the UK is fundamentally flawed. It's broken, it doesn't work, it's not fit for purpose. So we vote, when you go and vote, you vote for Reform. You put a tick outside of the guy with the Reform badge. You're not voting for Nigel, you're voting for a local representative of Reform that is going to represent your constituency. Now, once all those people are, once all those votes are counted, they find out who's won each constituency. Those constituencies then have to come together and form a government. So you see, even though one person might be leader of the party, each constituent and each member of parliament has their different views, their different ideas, their different conflicted interests, different companies they're working with. So it's very difficult to change anything. So one person can't change or really do much. They need everybody to be in agreement, and that just doesn't happen. So one person can't change the whole system. They would need to, the whole government would have to agree to change the system. And they're not going to agree to change the system. So look at the US, for example, and I get, what people say that, behind the scenes there are civil servants pulling the strings, and there are shadow governments and all the rest of it. But let's just look at the model itself without going into the weeds. So in the United States, you vote for a president. The president has, they have power. They can do executive orders. They've got power. They've got authority. They can change things. Look at Trump. He goes in there, and I think he was the only president who actually went in and got attacked for doing exactly what he said he would do. So that's the system in America, but we don't have that system in the UK. When it was set up, you kind of think that when the way they set the government up, the king or the queen would have overarching authority, but the reality is that, they don't. They're more of a symbolic figure at the moment. So the only way to stop this, guys, all right, and the only way that we can have better lives is to stop paying members of parliament salaries. I don't mean stop paying them. I actually mean the potential is you could pay them a lot more as well. So stop paying them salaries, or give them a minimum salary, a minimum wage or whatever. The constituents who voted for that person, they need the ability to pay them. Because guys, guess what? If you're an MP, you work for us. You don't say what you think we want to hear until so we can get your vote, so you can get our vote and then do what you want for 4 years. That's not how it works. Well, it is how it works, but it's not how it should work. So what I would propose is 50 pence from your council tax or from your local tax. You get to choose, each constituent gets to choose via an app on their phone, a text message, each month whether they want to pay their local politician. Obviously, you'd have to work it out. Some constituents are bigger than others, but you'd have to work it out. But what we need to do is we need to make it so that if the MPs are doing a good job and they're pushing, they're driving, they're helping the community, they're doing what they said, they're being tentative, they're being sharp, they're not letting their constituents down, then they get paid, and they get paid more because the constituents choose. So what would that do? It would attract competent people into politics. Guys, what I've seen in my limited toe dipping into politics is some really, really, well, I'm not going to say incompetent, but if they were in the private industry, if they were in the private sector, they wouldn't last 5 minutes. They wouldn't, guys, all right? They would not last 5 minutes. Because in the private sector, it's all about productivity. It's about doing stuff. It's about making stuff happen. If you're not productive in the private sector, guess what? You're gone. And it's that simple. So it'd attract the competent people that we need in politics. It would make people work for their money, because if they, at the moment, they don't have to work. We literally pay them for 4 years and they don't have to do anything. It's a good scam if you're on it. And it would make constituents take notice of what's happening. So imagine a world where our politicians and the people we voted for do what they say, or do what they've told us they're going to do. This system, by paying them by constituent payment, this system would allow that. It would make that happen. It would force it to happen, because guess what? Those MPs want to get paid. Otherwise, they can't do stuff. That's the reality, guys, all right? If you pay people, they'll do stuff. If you pay people for not doing stuff, they won't do some stuff. We have a literal socialist system with payment for MPs. We literally pay them just for turning up, and some of them don't even turn up. So guys, when it comes to this vote, you should obviously vote for whoever you want to. But what you need to do is you need to look at your local candidate and you need to think, are they a wartime leader? Could they negotiate with Putin? And that's the reality of the situation we are in today. Guys, I want reform to do well. I want a strong government, but I want a government that works for the people, not a government that works for itself and gets paid regardless whether it works or not. And my system here of constituent payment, that would sort all the problems out, because guys, all right, nothing happens without people getting paid. And equally, if people get paid, they work. That's the reality of the situation, guys. Let me give you another quick example. I think I've done this one before. When I used to work in Iraq, I started working for the gas and oil companies. Then I worked for the embassy. When I worked for the gas and oil companies, they were pushing, driving, they were, working all hours. They were literally burning the candle at both ends, because they were getting paid bonuses. Those engineers were getting paid bonuses for oil that they got out, and everything was high tempo. It was intense. Everybody was pushing forwards, and people were doing work in the middle of the night. When I worked for the embassy, They were cancelling meetings. They wouldn't get out of bed until 12. They went, yeah, I'll say this. So the British Embassy was, it was on TripAdvisor as one of the best nights out in Baghdad, and the ambassador went, he was furious about it. He was shouting, anyway. But that's the kind of culture you had in the embassy. Why? Because people got paid regardless. Whether those embassy staff went out and pushed, drove, succeeded, made things happen, worked really hard, spent all night doing documents, they still got paid the same. Now look at the two contexts. Both working in Iraq, both working, offices probably 800 metres apart. These guys are getting paid for the job they're doing. These guys are just getting paid for being there. You see the difference, guys, okay? The only way to sort this system is to pay our politicians for the work they do, and us as a constituents, we need to be able to decide this. So all these policies that they're making, all these new bits of legislation, it doesn't matter. None of it matters. As long as we keep paying them. We need to stop it straight away, guys, and we need to pay them, and the constituents need to pay them. Guys, that is it. I'm going to give you another video later on today. Let me know what you guys think. Am I wrong? Would that be a nightmare? Would that be terrible, guys? I love a bit of constructive criticism. Are you voting, or are you disenfranchised? You know what I'm trying to say, with the political system? Let me know in the comments below, guys. I'll see you guys later. I'm going to mag to grid.